Island. And secondly, if you're looking for the restrooms, you go out this door, and the men's is immediately to the right, and the women's is past the elevators to the right. So that's all on housekeeping. We'll start with introductions, and then we're going to have our first student presentation round. But I want to just go around in a circle, and I will single out the staff first, and then we'll introduce the student fellows. And so we'll just start with Lauren.
Hey everybody, some of you I met earlier in the summer. I'm Lauren, and I'm the outreach coordinator at the Pulitzer Center. So you guys have probably gotten a billion emails from me, as well as your professors have done the same. So it's nice to see all your faces, and I can't wait to hear your stories.
I'm Marvin Kalb. I am here as a senior advisor to the Pulitzer Center, and that's because I started as a journalist covering President Jefferson. And you have to understand that that gives me a perspective, which I take full advantage of. And while I'm doing that, I also try to write books and op-eds and articles and stay abreast of foreign affairs, and I'm absolutely fascinated by some of the subjects that are here, and I look forward to speaking to the people who do them. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Ann Peters, and I work with our campus consortium partners. So it's really terrific to see all of you here and to get to know you better. And hopefully we'll see some of you on your campuses. Some of you have graduated, so don't go back there unless it's for reunions, but welcome.
Hi, my name is Jin Ding. I'm the project coordinator here, and I did most of people's PowerPoint. You will see later today. Yeah, I do most China stuff and designing and like ebooks. Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Amanda Ottaway. I'm the education coordinator here. So my job is to get all the journalism, or a lot of it, that the grantees do into classrooms. So high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. We talk to kids about all of the issues that you guys cover, and it's a lot of fun.
Hi guys, I'm Evie. I met a few of you really quickly, but I'm the multimedia projects coordinator here. So I shoot and edit video, and I work with journalists that are doing visual things, help people that don't know how to shoot video, or take photographs. I have the privilege of curating exhibitions, and I do some design too. So.
Hello, I'm Quinn Lipson. I'm the social media editor for the Pulitzer Center, and I interact with our hundreds of thousands of followers, which is really, really fun, and I get to see how people respond to the work. And have the privilege of spreading the work as widely as we possibly can. And if any of you have questions about social media or like tracking website traffic or anything like that, which is kind of fun to talk about, I'm more than happy to share some things with you.
Why don't you hand the mic to Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Huntley. I'm the senior editor here, and I know some of you, and I've read work from almost all of you, and it's very impressive. And I look forward to now connecting faces to the words that I've read.
Okay, Jessica.
I'm Jessica Over. I'm an intern here, and I basically do a lot of things like post, help with social media and multimedia projects like the Meet the Journalists and such like that. And yeah. So.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I do a little bit of everything here too, and Jess and I are responsible for like building all of your posts when they come in. So we've gotten really familiar with your work, and we're really excited to meet you all.
Hi, my name is Catherine Doyle, and I'm associate editor here at the Pulitzer Center. So I help Tom with some of the fellowship applications for example, the hostile environment training, which is one that we're doing at the moment. And I've read all of your projects, and I think they're all fabulous.
Did I miss any staff? Okay, so why don't we just keep going now I'll start here with Julia. And if all the student fellows could just give us we're gonna hear in not great detail, but some detail about your projects. So just tell us your name and what school you're from and your project. And if you are a guest or a visiting professor, tell us your name too.
Hi everyone, my name is Julia Bacano. I'm a fellow from American University, and my project focused on exploring the discrimination and marginalization of the transgender community in Thailand. Hi everyone. Oh God. My name is Kateri Donahoe. I'm one of the fellows from Boston University, and my project was about female genital cutting in Mali and the efforts to stop the practice. Hi, my name is Rebecca Givian. I'm from the University of Southern California, and my project was on Indigenous education in Costa Rica.
Hi, I'm Diana Crandall, and I'm also from the University of Southern California, and Rebecca and I both did our project together in Costa Rica to explore Indigenous education and the lack of, or the influx of technology and the way it affects their culture. Hi, my name is Sydney Combs, and I'm from the University of Chicago, and I went to Tanzania to look at women empowerment in a rural tribe.
Hi, I'm TJ, and I am Sydney's mother.
Okay, now I'm going to start asking you to stand up.
Zach Kola, student fellow from Northwestern University in Qatar, and I went to India to explore the issue of how climate change is affecting communities in poverty.
Good afternoon, I'm Daniel Black, student fellow from Davidson College in North Carolina, and I went to Luanda, Angola to look at Brazilian multinationals in the country.
Hi, my name is Betsy Sabeja. I'm from SUNY Westchester Community College in New York. And I didn't go on my trip yet. I will be leaving on Tuesday, and I'm going to Peru to report on invasion homes and how there's so many families that don't have a place to live.
Hi everyone, my name is Claire Felter. I'm a recent graduate of Boston University, and I went to Zanzibar, Tanzania to look at water safety.
Hi, my name is Rodrigo Sebi. I'm from Laguaja Community College. I wrote a project about African migrants in France.
Hey everyone, my name is Priya Ramchandra. I'm a student fellow from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And my project was based in Andhra Pradesh, India, where I looked at payment programs to help impoverished patients pay for medical care.
I'm Jennifer Gonzalez. I'm from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and I went to the Dominican Republic to do a multimedia report on teenage pregnancy.
My name is
And
Lucas.
next to her is Stalin.
Oh, yeah. And I'm also from SIU, and I went with Jen on this project. Luke.
Hi, my name is Emily Feldman. I'm a recent Pulitzer Center grantee, and in the spring I went to Northern Iraq to report on the Yazidis who were targeted by ISIS about 1.5 years ago.
And let me just interrupt to say you will hear more from Emily tonight, as well as from Marvin Powell, who is no longer in the room.
My name is Farzana Shah, and I am a fellow from University of Pennsylvania. My project was in Iran, and I went with a organization that helps develop pediatric cardiac programs.
My name is Anna Hoffman. I'm from Kent State University in Ohio, and I reported from Ireland on Irish-speaking communities.
My name is Anne Troffnagel. I'm from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and I reported on open defecation in India.
Hi, my name is Clara Andrade, and I'm embedded in this chair. I'm a PhD student at School of Communication at American University, and it's really great to see all of you and add faces to your names. I went to Mexico City in particular. I was looking at accountability technology and just kind of like the way that those tools are being used for social change.
Uche Onyebari, SIU. Because I've come to give them some moral support. And that's it.
I'm Catherine Moore, a little bit involved in Westchester Community College, so I'm also part of the Pulitzer group.
So am I. Betsy, we're very proud of you. I'm Don Gregory from Westchester Community College. I teach journalism.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Megan. I represent the University of San Diego, and I reported on the refugee crisis in Australia.
These chairs are a problem today, huh? My name's Austin Davis. I'm one of the student fellows from the University of Michigan. I reported on educational disparities of students with Turkish heritage in Berlin.
Did we miss anyone?
John Sober's on his way.
Okay, and he's not in the first group, so that's a good sign. Okay, well, let's get started then with the first presentation. And, wait.
Today's not here.
Okay, so we are missing someone for the first presentation. Would the second group mind Megan, Rodrigue, Austin, and Betsy? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, why don't we, Jen, is that gonna mess us up?
No,
Slide wise? Okay, so why don't we start then with the four of you? So if you could come and sit here, that'd be great. So we're starting now with refugees, migrants, and the displaced. And I'd like Megan, Rodrigue, Austin, and Betsy to come up here. And sorry to put you on the spot, but now you'll get it over with. So you won't have to wait. And I'm wondering, has no one has been in touch with Jay, right?
Not what comes out of my mouth. As long as I look good.
That's why I mean, no, you're scared. You know what? No, Claire.
Okay, so the format for this is as follows. We're going to give each of the four of you 10 minutes. We do have a timer. Okay, why don't you come sit up here?
10 minutes.
And if
I don't.
No, I know that. Okay, so you don't have to speak for 10 minutes. When you get to 8 minutes, Jessica will flash a card that says 2 minutes. So when this happens, wind up your presentation. Then at the end, after all four of you have spoken, we'll have questions from all of you for the group. And Betsy, as she said, has not been to Peru yet. So she's just going to talk for like 3 minutes, I think. Okay, or whatever.
Yeah, sounds good enough.
Okay, so Megan, why don't we start with you? And Jen, do you want to explain anything here?
Just go.
Oh, is there no
There is no remote here, so everyone has to
Stand
press
on the podium.
Press the button here. Okay. Press the down button.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan. Yep, that's me. Cool, it's on there. So I represent the University of San Diego, and I actually went to Australia to report on.
Actually, I'm gonna. Can you stand right here and let's just slide the chairs down this way a little bit. That works. Then you can see the slides.
Yeah, so I think we're just moving down a little bit. Well, now I want to put.
Don't attack the tree.
How's it? Maybe we make a semicircle?
Okay. Put it back, and you put it back more like towards the tree.
There.
There we go. How's that?
Good enough, right? All right. So,
And just
are you
you three sit.
I suppose, yeah.
So whoever
I'm
speaks,
last.
let's keep this chair empty for
Empty.
so complicated.
So you're not. Okay. There we go.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're ready. Cool. Yeah. So my name is Megan, and again, I went to Australia to report on the refugee migrant crisis, which I'll explain because I know that a lot of attention has been focused on the refugee crisis in the EU or even the immigrants who are coming from Mexico. But there actually is a lot of interesting things going on in Australia that I think are worth noting. So I'll elaborate on those. Okay. So this is my presentation, Refugee in Australia, a Crisis of Imagination. And this is actually a photo I took in Melbourne. I'm not sure if any of you have been there, but there's actually amazing street art. And I went actually during the time when they were celebrating this like refugee week, so it's actually really good timing. And this is a photo that I took when I was in Melbourne, just kind of exploring my first day, just to see what was going on there. And here, this is a refugee, I believe, and he's in Canberra, which is the capital of Australia. And so, yeah, I just want to explain that picture a little bit. So I'll begin by starting with the history a little bit. So wheeling it back to 2013 was the introduction of Operation Sovereign Borders. And Operation Sovereign Borders was implemented by the federal government. And so you see here, this is kind of like the poster for the operations. And it's intense, but it's also trying to send a message, which is don't come here, you're not invited here. If you do come here, you're going to be stopped. And the mission, if you look online, it says to combat people smuggling and to protect Australia's borders, which I thought was interesting. It makes sense. You know, you want to stop people smugglers, etc. But the problem with that is that the people smugglers become demonized instead of focusing on the reasons as to why refugees are fleeing, if that makes sense. So they're kind of waging a war. Australia, at least the government, is trying to wage a war against people smugglers, which is, again, detracting from the underlying reasons as to why people do decide to become, or not decide, but decide to flee their homes and become refugees. So yeah, it's really important. And I think it's also worth noting too that the word sovereign is actually really important in Australia's political climate. They actually don't have to implement many of the UN sanctions. They don't have a Bill of Rights, etc. So the political legal scheme is much different than it is in the United States. And also too, what I've noticed is that when I was speaking to people, a lot of people are very disgruntled with the government right now, especially with the Abbott government. And I know there's a new prime minister, but especially during that time, there was a big push to, how do I say this? Not allow any immigrants or refugees to come in. And what they're doing actually too is that when it comes to sovereignty, there's this rhetoric around the government, especially that, you know, this is Australia, we can do whatever we want. We don't have to listen to UN. And I actually will elaborate about that sovereignty a little bit in the presentation. Okay. So what they're doing actually, and also in addition to just trying to make sure that refugees understand that they're not welcome in Australia, is that they're sending them offshore. And you've probably seen in the news maybe that the whole case with Nauru, Manus Island, these offshore processing centers, which also include deals made with Cambodia and Indonesia to send the refugees there so that they could be processed instead of being processed on the mainland of Australia. So here is Nauru, and you can see, I don't know if any of you all know what Nauru is about. It's the smallest country, and it's broke, basically. And so one of the incentives for Nauru actually to take in these refugees is that the Australian government gives them money, and they host these refugees in these camps. And mind you, too, it's an island, so it's really hot. It's really deserted. No one's really there in the sense of it's isolated from people. There are people who live in Nauru, but the problem with that is that the Australian government is giving all this money to Nauru, but I mean, if you look at the conditions, especially women who are pregnant, the men who live there, et cetera, it's not the best conditions for them. And so there's actually been a parliament inquiry into the abuses that happened to Nauru, as well as like the other off-processing centers. And so I also wanted to note too that there's the Border Force Act. And so even though there's a bunch of abuses going on, and even doctors who go there to treat people, they can't actually say anything about it. And so that also goes into the whole, how do you call it, like responsibility that doctors and lawyers have to protect their clients too. But the Australian government is saying basically that you could be in prison for saying anything to the public, et cetera, which actually this act went down when I was there. So it was really interesting talking to people. And I'm really grateful that people who I did talk to didn't really care about this act. They're like, no, we need to tell the truth. We don't care, which again, I'm grateful for. And it's also worth noting too that there's a principle by the Refugee Convention of the principle of indirect refoulement, which means that a country has a responsibility not to send refugees to a territory where they might be endangered or to a third country. So when I had mentioned just now about Indonesia and Cambodia, Australia can't do that because the refugees are actually trying to get to Australia, and Australia has the responsibility. They can't ship it to a third country, if that makes sense. So basically, in summary, they are violating a lot of UN sanctions. And that goes again with the whole sovereignty aspect of it, like we don't really care. But it's also worth noting too that there's actually onshore processing centers. And so one of the interviews I had, which was really impactful for me personally, was right outside of Melbourne. There's the Broadmeadows Detention Center. And so a lot of people in the news or a lot of media focus on offshore processing, but there's actually onshore processing. And this specific one, the refugees who suffered medical conditions like on Nauru, for example, were flown back onto the mainland to be treated. And so there's this whole contradiction of like, well, you can't protect them on the mainland, so then you're going to treat them or you can't protect them offshore, so then you're going to send them so that they can be treated onshore and then send them back offshore. If that makes sense, instead of making sure that they are safe. And so again, like the refugees, the government's forcing them to go offshore, just basically so that they don't technically have responsibility for these refugees. But there again is another inherent contradiction, because even though they're saying like, oh, these countries, they actually have the responsibility for the refugees, Australia is assuming responsibility by financing, by providing management, personnel to run these centers too. So this is a picture I took at one of the rallies and protests. And something worth noting is that people who are in the detention centers, they kept telling me like, we don't know when we're going to get out. We don't really have access to our lawyers. They're not told as to why they're there. Like they know that they kind of broke the law in the sense of like they don't have the proper document, etc. But again, with the indefinite detention, it's really important noting like what that psychological damage does to a person, in the sense of, especially parents who have children. They're thinking to themselves like, what about my children's health or their education prospects, etc. And so I think it's really important to note not just the legal and economical impacts of refugees, but also the human aspects of it too. Okay, so when I was there, a really important story that people kept telling me that like, hey, have you heard about the Forgotten Children report? And what's interesting about it too, and I think it goes back to the sovereignty, is that this report came out by the Australian Human Rights Commission, and it basically discussed about the abuses that are happening to children, the effects, the trauma, etc., and how that prolongs or even damages their well-being, etc. And so, you know, it's impactful, it's important, etc. But what the government did, especially with the Prime Minister Abbott at that time, he was like, oh no, the head person for the Human Rights Commission, this is all a political move. Instead of like addressing what was in the report and what we can do about it, he framed it as a very political thing, which again is just going back to the fact that they're trying to deter attention away from these refugees. Okay, and this is another picture of the concern that a lot of citizens in Australia have regarding children. This was another like street art with all the children who are in detentions, especially babies too. And the last thing I want to mention is it goes back to, this is an anti-refugee rally that I went to, but there was also a counter rally that I attended, and it's very distorted because the refugees have been linked to, or I guess in the mindset of a lot of Australians is that it's linked to like terrorism and fear of Islam. So that's worth noting. And I think too that I put up this picture with the fairness because a lot of people in Australia who are very anti-refugee or don't want them to come here, they're always saying that like, well, no, like they just need to wait their turn, you know, like they can just go through the process of being in a refugee camp and then they'll get like a number, etc., which goes back to the Western ideals of fairness, equality, etc., that everyone has to wait their line. But as we know with like the refugee crisis is that, no, it's very scattered. There's no orderliness to it. Yep. And this one's the last thing basically, which is the Aboriginal people, and that there's a lot of people that I talked to, they saw a connection between the treatment of the Aboriginal people as well as the refugees in Australia. So it's worth highlighting that. There's a quote from a professor I spoke to who said that the Indigenous population was encamped, removed, detained, and kept at a distance from the good white Australian. So Australians have in their memory and DNA that when you fear someone, you remove, detain, and keep them at a distance. Thank you.
Yeah, Rodrigo Smith. I'm from Republic of Congo. Actually, I have to start with my story, short story. I'm not supposed to be here, but I thank God to be here because the reason why pushed me to be here because when I was in Congo, it was a secret in our family. My mom, she couldn't write and read. So about 6 to 7 years when I found out because we have to go to church and she's supposed to read the Bible, but she couldn't. I have to read for her. So from there, I had to study. So I studied to become electrical computer technician. So because of what is going, a lot of things is going on in my country. So because I was born in 1983, and the president of my country, he was president in power in 1979 until now. So all these things, I became an activist in my country. So that's why it pushed me to come to United States as a refugee. When I came here and I received the help for Human Rights First and the Belleville Program of Torture and other programs. So I started my community college because in my country we speak French, so English is not, it was not my language. So, and I had to learn English. So I came here in 2010, everything, it was difficult for me until I started my school. But I switched my major to from electrical engineering because when I came here, most of people asked me to do electrical engineering because I was good in math and everything. Even when I started, they give me credit for math and all those things. I was doing good. And then all my teachers was like, oh, you are doing good. And then for me, I was not satisfied because the help that I received from all those organizations and with all the things that is going on in my country, that's why it pushed me to change my major to international law or political science. So from there, I wrote this article because we have a lot of people from my country, they are immigrant in France. So we almost in touch with friends all time by social media and other things. So when I received the opportunity to go to write something for to write the article, so when I get to France, the first day I get to France, I was start communicating with other African immigrants from the train station, different places. So I was asking a question if I was not immigrant in US, I was immigrant in France, I'm supposed to be like those people I report, because most of them they can't go to school, they don't have jobs, they don't have support, and also there's a lot of things that's going on. That's why I report about. If I want to talk about this guy, his name is Irene. He was working for one company in my country. So because he integrate opposition party, and that's why the president wanted to kill him. So he flew to France. And when he came to France to save his life, until now he didn't get any job, and also they didn't grant any asylum for him, and he was living almost in the street. So someone take him and then give him the place to live. And when I start to report about him, I said, but you can find something to do. He said, as a black in this country, you can find any job. I was like, really? And then I tried to go over interview other people, I receive the same answer. For me, I have the feedback that if you are Black immigrant in France, even though you have French citizens, you can get a job, especially if you have like diplomas and certificate and stuff, because in France, anything like work for dishwasher, everything that you can work, you need a certificate. So even clean the toilet, you need a certificate. But to get that certificate, it's a process. So it's difficult. I also have my great friends. She lives in France, so she always share with me on the phone. She graduated and she got a master degree. When she go to different places in the to find it, like looking for the job, they won't hire her, and they don't even tell her. But one day, other lady told her, say, listen, you have to find other area to apply, because you as a Black woman and have all this diploma, I don't think you will have a job here. So that shocked me too. And I have another guys. This guy's name is George Louis Georges in France. Louis Georges Tin. He's the president for Black Association in France. So he also worked with other soccer player they call Lilian Thuram. So this guy, he always come to United States for civil rights and stuff like movement, everything. So he's the guy who, when I did my own interview, and I was like, no, maybe I'm wrong. I have to go and find the local authorities so that I can find if what I reported is really matching with what he's gonna tell me. And then when I meet the guy, get the guy on the phone, and then because the person who put me in touch with the guy was the lady who's supposed to help me with my project. And when we meet with the guy, he told me the true stories for France. And he say we have like 1,000 Black teenagers who died every day in the police station, never report. You can see those things on the media. We have area that police go and do a lot of things for Black teenager, and all these things you can see that. And he also tell me, confirm what really told me about racism. When you walk in the street, you receive other set of violence, like people throw you bananas, and they curse you, they call you noir. Noir in French is black. So and also they call you macabre, which is in my country means monkey. So all these things, the guy told me, say they work hard with his organization to publish all these things. They even go to the government. They didn't get any answer. He even have other guys who was unemployed. He was working for Renault company. It's an automobile cars company, Renault. And that guy worked for that company. And during the economic crisis, the company called the company called the union to let all those Black people out, and he tried to help those Black people from Senegal. And then when the judge asked them, tell them that we can do nothing because you don't have any demographic ethnic, which is it's like kind of report for ethnic report that you have to show the judge that discrimination is. We have a website that shows we have discrimination. Black people can do that. Black people can do that. But the guy didn't have anything to prove to the judge. That's why they dismissed the case. So there's a lot of things happening in France. That's why I wrote about this article. So I hope you guys could like it.
Do I just click next?
Try that, and if it doesn't work, we'll call Jen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, y'all. So my name is Austin Davis, and I am one of the student fellows from the University of Michigan. And I spent the months of August and September reporting about educational disparities of students with Turkish heritage in Berlin. Berlin is the city with the largest Turkish population outside of Turkey itself. And studies have shown in the past that these students have been particularly disadvantaged within the German secondary school system, which, if most of you don't know what that is, it's tripartite, meaning there's three different levels to it. Students of immigrant background in general are twice as likely to fall into the lowest track of schools, which has virtually no possibility of university level studies later on in their educational career. And Turkish students really suffered in particular in this system. They had failure rates, dropout rates of about 30% in the system. So the city of Berlin, in order to combat these educational injustices, 5 years ago totally redid these structures. They identified the structure as the main problem with the system itself, and did away with the tripartite system and tried to make it so that Turkish students and immigrant students in general could advance with greater ease. And the point of my project was to try to gauge the efficacy of this new system, and also to learn more about this community that has sort of a unique history in Germany. What I'm going to be talking about today, though, is sort of the topic of my project within the greater context of refugees in Germany in general. It was sort of like a side question that I was asking a lot of people in my interviews. How is this new class of students, refugee populations that's flooding into Germany in the hundreds of thousands, how are they going to succeed within this new system in Berlin? So I thought, just to give you a little bit of background, we talk about the issues of integration with the Turkish community in Berlin in general. They've often been called the Sorgenkinder of integration, which means like the problem children of integration in Germany. So in 1961, the German government struck a deal with the Turkish government to bring over a mass of Turkish workers to fill the need for an economic boom that was happening in the country. After World War II, the working class was completely depleted. So between the years of 1961 and 1973, millions, literally millions of workers traveled from Turkey to Germany to resettle. It was never thought that these people were going to stay, but immigration never necessarily stopped. People came to recombine with their families, and because of geopolitical crises in Turkey, it just continued in waves and waves of immigration. And you would think that the German government would enact some sort of integration policy, but the only policy that was really practiced was to assimilate these people, to Germanize them. Students, even those who were born in the country themselves, often underwent sort of cultural purization, or acts to make them forget their Turkish language, forget their outward expressions of their Turkish culture, and only learn the German language in general. Secondary culture or language wasn't necessarily promoted at schools. And you would think that this was a way to bring them into society, but actually they were sort of segregated. The German workers were actually sort of put into certain communities, specifically within Berlin that we're talking about now. This is an apartment complex in Kreuzberg, which is known as Little Istanbul in Berlin. This is where Turkish guest workers were sectioned off into these communities. These communities experience higher poverty rates, higher education rates. They're outside of German society in and of itself. And also the social structures and the political structures in German society are very exclusive. I talked about the education system a lot, which really just disadvantages those who don't speak the language fluently, who don't know the cultural presuppositions of the German school system in general. But also nationalization laws in Germany really exclude those who aren't of German blood. If you don't have a German parent, it's very difficult for you to become a German citizen. And those things really continued until 2008 in the country generally. Within the school system itself, it changed in 2009. And what I went there was to try to not only gauge whether educational disparities were minimized, but also to try to identify how Turkish students felt as Germans. I mean, they've been there for 5 generations, and there's sort of this conflict of identity that they're born in the country, and it's expected of them to learn about the culture and the language. But then at the same time, they're still considered foreign. They're still considered outsiders. And I sort of tried to explore this within a multimedia project that I did for the Pulitzer Center as well. And I'm going to play like a minute of it if it works. I don't know. Just click on it. Okay, I don't know. I don't know, really. Okay, here we go. Looks like it's working, right?
Yeah.
Is the sound on? Sorry, I'm being difficult. I can just kind of talk about what was said. It's going to be too difficult.
That's fine. It'll take a little bit of time.
Do you want me to just talk about it instead of the video?
We can play that.
The video's not, it's not a big deal, really. It's just kind of cool. I don't mean that to like toot my own horn or anything, but I thought it was cool to like hear their actual voices and people explain what it's like to occupy sort of a middle identity. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Man kriegt immer Jen, und wo kommt Ihre Familie eigentlich her? So, also man geht einfach anders damit um.
Can we read the subtitles? Is that okay?
In Amerika ist halt so eine totale Einwanderungskultur. Wie gesagt, wenn du da geboren bist, musst du Amerikaner essen. Das gibt es in Deutschland nicht. Dann bist du immer noch was anderes. So, wo kommst du eigentlich her? Das ist immer die Frage.
Diese Identität, den Identitätsbegriff, wo kommt der eigentlich her? Wir haben letzte Woche so Hip-Hop-Texte untersucht aufgrund von Heimat und Identität. Und da gab es von Echo Fresh ein Lied, der singt, dass die Türkei seine Heimat ist, aber er war noch nie da. Und so gibt es viele von unseren Schülern. Das heißt, sie erleben es, das heißt Familie und vielleicht auch dieser Zusammenhalt in der Gesellschaft, wo sie vielleicht eher Ablehnung erfahren. Und es fängt bei solchen Begriffen an, also Ausländer oder Migrationshintergrund.
Hier sind wir Ausländer und da sind wir die Deutsch-Türken. So, hier werden wir benachteiligt, weil wir uns hier nicht integrieren können. Und da werden wir benachteiligt, guck mal, der kann kein Türkisch. Weil unser Türkisch oder unser Akzent ganz anders über. So werden wir. Wir sind in der Mitte.
Das Kind. So.
Okay. So as you can see, although these people have been here for generations, their families have been here for generations, they still feel as if they occupy this middle identity. And it got me to wondering, what necessarily does that mean for this new refugee classes that are coming in? Now, it's worth mentioning that a lot of the students of Turkish heritage, we are seeing that this new structural changes in Berlin have opened their educational opportunities. There are more people progressing to the highest level of secondary school, more people going on to university level studies, but the city itself still remains incredibly segregated into these neighborhoods that were traditionally Turkish, where the Gastarbeiter used to live. A lot of educational or education administrators that I spoke to, I asked them, what does this necessarily mean for these new refugees that are coming in? They're these students that need to be educated. And they were pretty open about it. They were pretty adamant that a student can receive the same level of education in the new Berlin system as they would be able to get anywhere else in the country. Academics that I talked to, however, were pretty skeptical. They said that in these areas that are still predominantly immigrant communities, like Neukölln or Kreuzberg, where we saw the first picture, that are 80% immigrant communities, they're still incredibly structurally weak, and they don't receive as much of the same funding as predominantly German areas do. And because of that, there's sort of a worry that students will not be able to catch on to the language as much, that they will in fact encounter more educational disparities. So what do these students really, when they come into Germany, what sort of classes are they in? They're actually segregated into other classes. They go into Willkommens what they're called welcome classes. The city of Berlin has implemented a little over 400 of these classes to meet the needs of about 4,500 students, and that's being increased. But there's lots of problems that the teachers themselves don't really know how to teach German as a second language, and that there's a lot of issues that these students, they're still being accustomed to this sort of Germanization of education rather than sort of individual competencies. So to end the presentation, I want to introduce you to M&A. She's an immigrant to Germany recently. She came here a few years ago, and she sort of was a face of a struggle that a lot of immigrants have when they come to Germany. She's from Istanbul. She's a trained cosmetologist, but she's not able to find a job in Germany. In order to get a job, she actually has to go through a 2-year German course in order to just get a job title. And that working visa is only given to her if she passes a language test, if she passes a cultural test. In the meantime, she has to live off a 400 euro stipend a month, which she uses to support herself and her son. So as we can see, there's still this culture of Germanization going on. There's still a lot of issues with integrating non-German peoples into the society itself. And there's still a lot of questions to be asked about the role of refugee classes in Germany. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm from SUNY WCC. I already told you guys that, sorry. I haven't gone on my trip yet. I know she didn't make a thing, but I'm just gonna briefly talk about what I'm gonna be reporting on. As of 2013, there were 1.3 million poor people in Lima, Peru, according to the district poverty map publicized by the Instituto Nacional de Estadística e Informática. In English, the National Institute of Statistics and Computer Science. But what does this really mean, like, for Peruvians? It means that there's no jobs, there's no income, there's no housing. Many of these people go through extremes, and they go and take over terrains that are not for sale, I guess you could say. They're just government areas, or they belong to a certain company, but they're not open for the public to build their homes. But since they have nowhere else to live, they just go and build whatever they can in there. And these are not homes like with a roof or anything. They're like cardboard homes and no water. There's no light. There's no, floor. It's just dirt. So it's pretty bad. It is estimated that about 10,000 families are left without housing. 10,000 families a year. That's a lot of families. Where do these people go? Well, they find a place to live. They can't be on the street. They try to find a home for their kids, because a lot of these families, these are not just individuals. These are families. They have kids, babies, all kinds of things. So these families look for illegal land traffickers who sell them a lot for about $7. $7, okay? If you could find a place to live for $7, wouldn't you do it too? No, nobody's giving them a place to live. And if they can afford $7 to put 4 pieces of cardboard together and call it their home, they're gonna do it, and that's what they're doing. These terrain invasions are all over Lima. They're all over. And they're constantly fighting poverty and medical issues because they don't have any kind of support, no medical, nothing. And a lot of the authorities, they always trying to remove them. In many cases, in order to flatten the land, they will use dynamite to flatten it. Think about it. It's like cartoons, like, oh, they put a dynamite and it explodes and the mountain's gone. Well, people actually do this in real life down there. And it's kind of crazy because it's like, when was the last time you heard of somebody around here using dynamite to build their home? It's like unbelievable. But these people have no other choice. So that's what they're doing. So on Tuesday, I will be leaving for 2 weeks. And I have, I'm Peruvian. I was born and raised there. And I always, as I was growing up, I always saw those little houses. And I just thought that was just normal. That's where people live. But as I got older, I realized that these people have really nowhere else to go. And that's why they're doing that. And I want to hear and I want to know their side of the story, because the government keeps saying, this is a terrible thing. They're destroying important landmarks or this and that. But why? Because I'm pretty sure that if I was one of those people and somebody tells me, hey, look, you can either destroy this or I can give you this little house here for you to live, I would rather live in their little house or whatever help that they could give me. But the government's not doing that. So my point is, what do you expect these people to do if you don't give them a place to live and you try to kick them out from what they call their homes? Where do those people go? I intend to go look for those people to see where they're going after they get kicked out of those invasion areas and little homes, because they do get kicked out. Some of them come back or they go to different areas. But I want to find those people, hear the story, hear how they live, if they work, if they don't work, how do they feed their children, if their children go to school, if they don't go to school. Like, that's that's the main idea of my project. So I hope you guys enjoy it when it's done in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited, and I just want to thank the Pulitzer Center for the opportunity. Thank you.
Those were excellent presentations. That was really wonderful. And now we want all of you to have a chance to ask questions. We had talked about having you line up behind this mic, but I think it's a little crowded. So we may, can you just take that mic off? And we might just end up passing that around. Okay, and I will give this back to you all. And you should share the mic, whoever can speak. So do we have questions? Okay.
Austin?
Yeah,
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
I hear you just
All
okay,
right,
though,
yeah, you
either
can
way.
hear me.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued. You said Turkish immigrants in Germany are required to pass a number of tests. Now, one of them is cultural test. What does that mean?
No, it's not just Turkish immigrants in general. It goes for all of those who are moving to the country under the pretense that they're going to be working. If you don't have command of the German language, you have to pass a certain you have to pass an exam that shows that you have command of the German language and that you're able to navigate the cultural presuppositions of German society. A lot
like what?
I don't know the test. I don't know the test particularly. I don't know.
Like how to eat, how to.
I would imagine how to enroll in welfare, how to apply for housing, things like that. Which I mean, Germans are very known for crazy bureaucracy, and I mean that's there's a little truth in every stereotype, but Germany is pretty insane when it comes to bureaucratic means, and it's expected that if you come to the country and you're going to be working there, that you'll be able to file your taxes correctly. There's really a culture in Germany of independence, regardless of from what background you come to the country with. And it's expected that you have that level of independence to be able to navigate the culture regardless of where you come from. And that means being able to speak the language to a certain level, and that means knowing what's expected of you in culture. And for M&A, who I spoke with, that was a 2-year process where she had to live off welfare for her and herself.
Other questions? Yes.
I just had a question for Megan. I can talk.
Okay. Well, wait, we're actually recording this, so why not?
I was just wondering, with the detention centers, were there a group of certain people that were coming in through certain countries? Did you see or did you feel like they were getting treated worse than other people, or was it just kind of basic? If you were coming to Australia, you were all treated with the same level of not welcoming type of feeling, or was it different between where you were coming from?
Sure. So I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about the inner detention dynamics. And I know that's difficult to say because I'm sure there's an element of racism in there. The people that I did speak to, a lot of them were from Iran, actually, and also Middle Eastern countries as well. I didn't see too many Syrians, actually, and I'm sure that there's an influx of them soon. But that would be actually really interesting to discover as well, because I did see some diversity in terms of where these refugees came from. But the conditions were abominable enough that I don't think anyone got better treatment, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's just really important to just point out that it was just a really distressing environment. And but I'm sure there could be inner dynamics that I'm unaware of. I couldn't spend that much time within the detention centers because, like I was saying before, the Australian government couldn't allow me to go in, so I had to say I was a visitor. I had to pretend that I actually knew someone there, so I was able to work with a couple of people in the community who gave me names of the people who are in detention. So that's how I was able to interview them, which was kind of difficult because I couldn't tell them up front why I was there, if that makes sense. And then I had to rely on someone else to tell them actually why I was there, but I had to pretend that I was just another person who was visiting them. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Yes.
Rodrigue, I had a question for you. How do you believe that your experience as a refugee added to your perspective when you were listening to people speak about their experiences in France?
First of all, when I came to the United States, I landed to DC, and I didn't have no way to go. And the money that I brought from my country, I spent it for my just to live in a hotel. And I had a computer, and my English also was really, really bad at that time. So, and I had to search for other organizations and stuff like this until I found the guy who was working for Belfield Program of Torture. He's the one who say, okay, you can take a bus, come to New York. And I went to New York. They put me in shelter for a year until they support me, even to have a cell phone, because I didn't have money. And because the all money that I bring, I spend it to hospital and stuff. So, and right now I'm in community college. I'm learning English. My first essay was a disaster. I tell you, I don't know why I work as a teacher. So it was a disaster. My teacher can tell. So, and I was like, won't give up, because my mother told me, I want you to be like other kids, because I didn't have opportunity to read and write. I want you to read and write. I want you to be, in quotation in my country, say white, when you know how to read and write. I want you to be that white for my family. That's why I was like, okay, I will push, even though I didn't sleep. I read, I go to CNN, listen to the news, reading the signs in the train station everywhere. So it was, until now, I want to speak, I want to give you good stories today, but I can't. I don't have that language that is the same as you. So, and even though my English was broke in my college, I still have a high GPA. And I even help other students with math and stuff like this. So my asylum was granted, and they gave me asylum, and Bellevue Program of Torture helped me to go to school. The first things I hear in my hair when I go to school for financial aid, they say they're gonna pay for you. I said, nobody can pay for you in my country. So because I like school, but I didn't have that good opportunity to go to the best school in my country. And also linked with the story from my country with French people, with what they done in my country. Like I tell you, my mother couldn't read and write, and they still keep the president for 32 years in power, and kids can go to school. I grew up where to eat is a wish. You wake up in the morning, you see your mom, you know what is happening. And to eat, you have to go to uncle, or maybe a neighbor, or maybe carry. Me, I was carrying like recipient for work, recipient for someone like working. You go fetch for work for someone and pay you, and you bring that money, you give to your mother to do something so that you can eat. And I came to the country that they gave me the opportunity to go to school, sitting in the chair. In my country, I didn't sit in the chair when I was in school, even in high school. We sit on the ground. I didn't have a book, my own book. When they said, they're gonna give you money to buy a book, I said, my mother, you know how much they give for me for the book? So I said, Father, just say, no, just send me that money. Because nobody can believe you. Even when I share with my girlfriend on the phone, I said, they give me 500 for books. She said, no. In France, she lives in France. She said, no, I have to prove. And all those things, I would say, when I went to France, and I never, what is said, jump the train station. I try to translate it in the way when you say to French, sauter. So I never like fraud the MTA in New York since from 2010 until now. When I was in France, I saw a lot of people from my country, even from other countries in Africa. They don't pay for the train. I even reported. They don't pay for the train, but I was like, no, something's going on. How can, when we came to the train station with my girlfriend and the other friend, most of them jump. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I have to pay. Say, what? You pay what? I said, sorry, I paid. And they said, you ready? I was like, if I didn't come to the United States, I would do the same thing as those people. Mm. And that's what I say, that experience with what we share with them, and even to get a job working for dishwasher, someone asked me for the certificate. I didn't see these things in New York. So my experience when I went to France, I would say it was different. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have sort of the same question for Betsy. How will your background as a Peruvian add to your experience reporting in Peru?
I think that being born and raised there, I got here when I was 10, and I wasn't poor. Like personally, like my mom and I, we weren't poor, but we had a lot of family members who were. And like I said, seeing those little houses to me from a distance, like they look really, really tiny, like up the hill, like they just seemed normal. Like that was just like part of like life. But I think it would get me like, in a sense, closer to my people, because I've been here for 16 years now. I'm more American than I am Peruvian, even though I'm still a Peruvian citizen, and it hurts me, like in a patriotic kind of way, it's like you see your, people that, because like he said, like there's a big difference. You compare things, how you were in your country and how things are here, how they help you. Like there's shelters here. Like if you're homeless, you can go sleep on a shelter and then they go back on the street, right? They don't have those kind of things over there. You see in New York City, a lot of homeless people like on the street with signs saying, I'm homeless, I'm this, I'm that. You see a lot of that there, but you see kids doing that. Can you imagine a city with little kids or mothers with babies in their arms asking you for money because they have nowhere to go, and at night they don't have a shelter to sleep at? It hurts you just to see that, because okay, maybe the parents made bad decisions, maybe they were on drugs, but the kids are suffering that too, So I see all of that, and I just think back about how lucky I was that even though I wasn't poor there, I got a chance to come here and make a life for myself, to be surrounded by people like you guys and go to college and get a degree and be able to travel and be able to do things. So, excuse me. So I feel like by going back and reporting on something that's so close to my heart, excuse me, I can kind of let people know, like people that are here or from other countries, that you might complain about how your life is here. Like, oh, I don't have money for gas. I can't go to the mall. Like silly things if you think about it, because there's people in other countries who are, like him, carrying water so they can eat, so they can maybe buy a notebook that they're going to use for 3 years because they're going to write really small because in school, because that's the only thing that they have, When have you used the pencil all the way to the end? Never, because you have so many and then you lose them all the time. Kids over there don't have that. My mom told me that when she was a kid, her mom didn't have enough money to buy pens, so she wouldn't buy pens. She would buy just the cartridge of the pen inside the little skinny one with the ink, and that's what they would use, because she would buy them by the bulk because they were cheaper. If my mom grew up like that, and now I'm here with an iPhone, it's like, it's crazy. It's a crazy reality. And those kids down there, there's kids that still live like that. There's kids that have no shoes, they have no water. They don't have water to drink, to shower, to do anything. And we're here complaining that you don't have enough money to upgrade from the iPhone to an iPhone 6. It seems illogical. And I want those kind of people that, you know, worry about the little things to know that there's more to life than your own little world here. There's a lot of people out there with needs and like real needs and necessities. And, you know, maybe who knows, maybe somebody will read something, someone that has money and goes, you know what, let me go check it out down there. Maybe they do a housing project. Peru is actually the only South American country who doesn't have a housing project for the homeless. Colombia and other countries, they're getting rid of their homeless because they're building homes for the poor people. But we're not doing that. Why not? What's the problem? That's what I want to see. That's what I want people to see. And maybe someone out there might be like, you know what, let me invest in that. And then those people can, you know, wash their face every day or have something to drink. Thank you.
And can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Rajiv Rimal. I'm from George Washington University. Thank you. Quick question to Rodrigo. I missed the name of the country. He kept saying my country. I didn't know which one. And then to Austin, the more substantive question.
Why don't you just answer that right now?
My country is the Republic of Congo.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. To Austin, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about putting in context the current refugee situation, especially in Europe, because I think just the view from the outside is that Germany is a very generous country, and I'm wondering if you could contextualize that for us, given your own research.
Yeah, 100%. In comparison to other European lands, I would say that assumption of the general public that Germany is a very generous land is spot on. Germany did away with the Dublin III regulations, which means that once you enter the European Union, the country that you first come to is the one that you have to stay in. Germany said, we're going to ignore that, so any refugees who come into Germany, we're going to accept. It was estimated that around 800,000 refugees would enter into the country. And the problem that many German citizens have, especially those in the former East Germany, those who I'd spoken with, the problem that they have is that they feel that there are these actions being taken to allow the refugees into the country, but that there's no real policy of integrating these people into society, of placing them in different areas, and in settling them in general. And especially in Eastern Germany, where you don't see many pockets of refugee populations. Berlin is in East Germany, but there's 5 German states that were in the former East Germany, and they're traditionally not homogenous societies, homogenous German societies. And there's a real fear of people coming into these small German villages and not being able to integrate into society. And Germans in general feel like there isn't much communication between the government on high and themselves regulating what necessarily is going to be done with these people. Was that sort of the answer to your question that you were looking for? Yeah, because and it's a big problem now as well, because a lot of people go into these detention centers similar to what you were talking about, Megan, and they stay there for an indeterminate period of time, and because similar to the story that I explained, Emine, who is an immigrant from Istanbul, there's a process that you have to go through in order to be granted a work permit. There's a process that you have to go through in order to be even granted a residency permit. And until that happens, these people are sitting in these refugee camps. Eisenhüttenstadt is the largest in Germany, and it's right on the Polish border. I've been there on a previous trip to Germany, but I didn't have the chance to go this time. And the people can't do anything. They sit there and they sort of twiddle their thumbs and wait for the opportunity to be issued these work permits. And so I guess to answer your question in a more succinct way, yes, Germany seems generous to the outside public, but you go and talk to a normal German and they'll tell you that there is not very much communication between those people on high and the German public in general. And you talk to the refugees themselves and they'll probably say the same thing. We're here in Germany, we're looking for a better life. It's not really being told to us how we get there.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Quinn?
This one's for Megan. I'm interested in what you saw from the rhetoric in Australia. I mean, you talked about signs and propaganda, but there's obviously in the US been a lot of interesting rhetoric in the presidential debates about immigration from Mexico, and I'm wondering how the rhetoric in Australia that deals with immigration compares with what we hear in the media in the US.
Sure, thank you for that question. So when I mentioned the Operation Sovereign Borders, I didn't fully explain that, I'm really sorry about that. That's turning back the boats. So basically, like, obviously Australia operates in a geographical vacuum. It's in the middle of nowhere. Well, not nowhere, but kind of nowhere to us. And they know that. And that's the thing about it, is that many Australian people are like, yeah, that's why no one pays attention to us. That's why we can do whatever we want in terms of allowing the government to not have to follow UN sanctions, et cetera, stuff like that. What's really important to note too is that turning back the boats seems like a very humanitarian thing in terms of what the government's trying to say within its rhetoric. It's saying like, no, like we don't want them to die on these, dinky little boats, and so they should just go back to their home country. And so you have this buzzword of humanitarian being co-opted by the government in order to turn back all the refugees. And so I think if you make that comparison to, for example, people coming from Central America, like, oh, we should just turn back the people on the trains so that, they don't die on the trains, but they should go back to their war-torn countries, So there's that inherent contradiction within the rhetoric too. And in the same vein, people dying on boats, there's actually a real genuine humanitarian sentiment with the Australian people. And it's really complex because in their mind, they're like, what do we do with these people, in the sense of like, they are dying, but we shouldn't turn them back on their boats. And so we have to make sure that we recognize both sides of the argument. That like, yes, there is that anti-Muslim sentiment everywhere in the world right now, but there's actually people too, like normal citizens, who are like, wow, these people are dying on these boats. And so maybe turning back the boats isn't such a bad thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
All right, well, this has been a wonderful conversation, so thank you all. Before we move on to the next panel, there are a couple of people who we want to introduce. We have two student fellows and who came in after we had our preliminary introductions. So if you could just say your name and your college and the title of your project.
Hey, my name is Jay. I go to college at WashU in St. Louis. I examined the healthcare system in Uganda this summer.
And you're going to hear more about it in about 5 minutes.
I'm John Sibber. I'm from Davidson College, and my project was on the economic effects of reliance on petroleum products in Ghana.
And we have a few guests. Oh, okay, well, I'll pass the microphone here. So let's see, if you could just say your name and your university affiliation, if you have one.
Hi, I'm Helen Human. I'm also from WashU in St. Louis.
And you introduced yourself. Okay, so we have two people.
Thank you.
And then, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michael Bodley. I'm from Elon University, and this January I will be traveling to Western Ireland to report on the effect of modernity on Gaelic and traditional Irish culture.
And Glenn, welcome, by the way. He is our only 2016 student fellow here.
And we just chose him 3 days ago. So thank you, Michael, for coming quickly. I'm pardon my voice, I'm just getting over something. Glenn Scott, I'm a associate professor at Elon and a journalism teacher.
Thank you. And we do have one more student fellow. Kara, you weren't here for the introduction.
Sure.
We were. Oh, Andrew. Okay, did I miss anyone? No, okay. So what we're gonna do now, we really want to get started with the next panel at 2:30. We're going to have a longer break after the second panel. So this break is only to stand up, stretch. You can get something to drink or eat, but then bring it back to the chair. This is not a chatting break. No talking.
No talking a lot.
Yes. Not a forever California, say a year more. Maybe back to the East Coast. I don't really know yet. I still have to be there. I have a job and then so we'll see. Well, it seems like it's Mexico City.
So hot. But it was so cold, like.
Exactly. It's cold until everyone migrates.
That infiltrated. That was a good one. Other groups I like it with. Yeah. Yeah, one of the big things like one of the family members.
That's great. I'm really glad.
Yeah, I did it in Spanish.
Well, so,
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
yes, actually, over the summer.
I did not have that. Yeah.
Are you blushing?
I'm like nervous enough.
Yeah, I checked the.
Yeah, okay. It's, those are, yeah, I've never been, but.
I'm sorry. Okay. In fact, I'll announce that. Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Are you?
No, this is just.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Yeah, I am.
So you're good. Okay, so let's, is this on? Is this on?
No, you're fine.
This one maybe? No.
Well, but we should have two.
Yeah.
Okay, so we, you all are right there. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna get started, and I just wanted to mention that all of you have the Twitter handles and the Instagram handles for everyone. Please keep live tweeting and Instagramming and whatever you want to do. So if you didn't pick this up, we might have some more in the back. Does anyone need this? Okay. And then, okay. Secondly, okay, we are live streaming this for YouTube. And if we think you're too, I think we can all hear you. The problem is when you live stream something, you have to be even louder. So even though people in the room can hear you, you have to speak up for the YouTube. So Akela is there in the back, and if she ever thinks you're getting too soft, she's going to wave. So if you see her waving, it means speak up, or speak into the mic, hold it really close.
Jess is actually.
Oh, all right, so Jess will be waving, but if somebody's waving at you, hold the mic closer. And let's just get started now with global health, and we'll start with Anne.
Sweet. All right. Good afternoon. Is this on? Hello?
It was on. You turned it off?
Hello. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Anne Shavnagle. I went to India and I reported on open defecation. So I wanted to start with this photo because I thought this was kind of a good example of what my summer was like. I felt like every time I went somewhere, someone would just like appear with a plastic chair like this and a cup of chai, and then would talk to me about their toileting habits. So sometimes it involved a toilet, sometimes it didn't, but I was really grateful for the kindness and hospitality of everyone I met, and everyone was very generous with their time and personal information. So So I was reporting from Bihar. This is a pretty typical scene in Bihar. It is a rural area, one of the poorest states in India, also one of the most populated states in India. And 2/3 of people in Bihar practice open defecation, which means they relieve themselves outside. This is a really huge public health problem, as you might imagine. It's associated with premature death from diarrheal illness, also with violence against women and girls as they search for a private place to relieve themselves, and significant cognitive and physical stunting of the growth of children. So the government is well aware of this problem. They've been working on it for decades. And still, despite all these different sanitation schemes, 70% of people in the village in which I was staying do not have a toilet at home. And there was a survey that came out last year that showed 40% of, so households with a toilet in them, 40% of them have at least one person who continues to relieve themselves outside, even if they have a toilet at home. So these were some of the themes that I wanted to explore. So finding number one, not all toilets are usable. I call this my toilet, or not my, I call this the toilet graveyard. It's pretty, it was not uncommon to go to someone's home and see these like smatterings of broken toilets, unusable toilets around the compound. And this toilet graveyard belonged to a man named Ramchandra, who his local government official basically was paid to install toilets in all of the houses in his community. So he would come and he put in these toilets, but he took the majority of the money just to pocket it that was donated toward, or was given towards this, and just put in a toilet pan or put in like a stack of bricks and a tarp on top, something that was never once used. So these people sometimes are registered as having a toilet, but of course you're not going to use it if it is completely full of dirt or if you can't use it for other reasons. And this is Ramchandra standing in his toilet graveyard. He is the frustrated owner of these broken toilets, and I think he represents some of the biggest shortcomings of sanitation schemes in India. So the present program that they're doing is actually like a very good effort. It's the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi this was part of his big campaign when he was campaigning for office. He said he wanted to improve sanitation to end open defecation by 2019. And this program called Swachh Bharat, or Clean India, works differently in every state of India, but in Bihar, you build a toilet and then you apply for reimbursement, and then you may or may not receive that reimbursement. And it's a $150 approximately for the toilet. So Ramchandra is a Dalit, which is also like formerly known as untouchable. So he has really limited career opportunities. He and his wife are toilet cleaners at a community toilet facility about a 40-minute walk away from his home. So he does not have $150 to build a toilet, which is a big problem. And I think that most people in this area do not have $150. They earn a few dollars a day and spend that on their day-to-day costs and not on building a toilet. Another problem with this program is there's still a lot of corruption, although it's different than previous programs. So when he went to apply for the reimbursement, his local government official, the same guy who, or the same like title as the person who built the shoddy toilets before, he required a bribe to sign the form that he needed to submit to possibly get the reimbursement. So there are a lot of deterrents for people who like that. They are hesitant to put forth this investment if they're not going to necessarily get back the money. Another thing that I thought was interesting was that Dalits are mostly in this community largely illiterate. They don't have access to the government services as much. And he said that how do we apply for things that we don't even know about? Right when I got off the plane in Delhi, it was like everywhere were these big signs that said, clean India, throw your garbage away, like take ownership of your community and build a toilet. And so I know this as an international person coming in, but there was not one mention of this in the communities where I was. And then finally, he got some assistance. So he did have enough money to build his toilet. He cleared the space out. They dug up those toilet pans and we're going to use those to build the new toilet. However, people didn't want to come to his house and do construction in his house because he is a Dalit. They said it smells bad and there are pigs around here and we don't want to be dirty, so we're not coming to your home. So there are all these practical challenges that people are facing and really, really big challenges to ending open defecation by 2019. There are also millions of people who are landless and don't have the ability to build a toilet. However, this question of willingness of people wanting to use toilets, which comes up a lot in the academic literature, I think. I think that for my findings, it wasn't a question of, are you willing to use a toilet? Do you want to use a toilet? It was all access. So some people said, only the women in my family use toilets. We do this because it's safer. We want to protect them, and the men go outside. And I said, oh, why do the men have to go outside? And they said, because we don't have enough land to dig a new pit if this one fills up, or we don't have enough money to pay somebody to pump out the toilet, to pump out the waste and remove it and dispose of it. So they would just limit the toilet use for the women and for other kind of special occasions, basically. And many people would talk to me about how they would hold it until they did have access to a toilet. So Ramchandra he and his wife work at a toilet cleaning facility. They said, yeah, if possible, we wait till we get to work and then we relieve ourselves. But obviously that's not always possible. A lot of people work in the fields and maybe they have a toilet at home, but they have no access to toilets at work. Or even people who are building toilets, construction workers, there were no toilets on scene. So they would, even though they're building a toilet to combat this problem, they would still have to go outside. Everyone wanted the dignity of a toilet, though. That was a common theme. So this is a school, and all the girls raising their hands are ones that don't have toilets at home. And I think that this kind of shows that it's a structural problem. It's a widespread problem. However, I think that if we're talking about the progress of sanitation in India, I think that schools are one of the success stories. They still have a lot of room to grow, but in the last 5-10 years, they made a really big push, and a lot more people have toilets at schools, especially girls. This was the school. Right here is the well where they pump their water, and then right here is where, before there were toilets at this school, where kids would go and relieve themselves during the day. I talked to girls who were at this school before the toilet was built and then after the toilet was built, and they said, we would try not to drink water during the day so we wouldn't have to go to the bathroom, but if we couldn't help ourselves, we would go. And as you can see, there are some kids here, the headmaster's office is right here, and then the little tiny cornfield is right there. They said the boys would follow us and we wouldn't be able to go because we were being watched. And so we'd just go home early from school. And there's been a lot of push to improve this, and this school now does have a toilet, and now girls can stay the whole day. They can change their sanitary napkins at school, and they have a lot of benefits. There's also a lot of educational benefits to this. So finally, I just wanted to say thank you to the Pulitzer Center for support and promoting my work, also to Kim for your amazing editing and reassurance in the darkest hours. And then also this is some of the guys that I worked a lot with. This is, we call them the Bihari boys, kind of bro-y, but a lot of fun to work with. They're my fixers, driver, translators, and generally smart people who taught me about sanitation. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, hey, my name is Jay. I'm a senior at Washington University in St. Louis. This summer I was in Uganda for 3 months, doing the journalism as well as some other projects I was working on. So I was in eastern Uganda, like right around this area. So before starting journalism, I did a public health project in which I went to 30 different study sites. So that helped me identify like what villages to do my journalism in, and also like it helped me build rapport with people. So I reported on emergency medicine, on the state of emergency medicine in Uganda, as well as the challenge to healthcare that people in rural Uganda face. So the sites that I went to in Uganda was very remote. A lot of the areas were inaccessible by car. So you can see this is a road, but it's not really a road anymore. So like cars can't like pass by anymore. So the only way to like get around is by motorcycle or by bicycle or by walking. And this has big implications in terms of how easy it is to get healthcare. Because like if you don't have a car, if you don't have transport, it's hard to get to the health center to get care. And this is kind of like how I got around and the motorcycle. And this is a typical scene in a village. So you can see like the mud huts, and they're drying some corn for what's called posho. It's like a staple food in Uganda. So Uganda's healthcare system works on a referral basis. So the smallest ones are health center 2s, and then health center 3s, health center 4s, regional referral hospitals, and national referral hospitals. So nearby villages like this, they're usually health center 2s, which usually serve about 10,000 people. But the problem is that the health centers, at the rural health centers, there's not really any medicine or any like services. So this is a health center 2, so you can see the medicines, but this is the only medicine that they have there for like the whole place. And there is only one person working there. There's supposed to be 4 people working there, but there is only one, because one was having a baby, one was sick, I think, and the other one is going for further schooling. So this one midwife was taking care of basically everybody. So I think this is malaria RDTs, malaria testing kits, but there were no malaria medicine at that time. So just kind of showing you like how underserved it is. So people wait in these wooden benches to talk with a healthcare provider. So it's not like really a private setting. So like people like participate in other people's like history conversations and stuff like that. So say inside of the health center 2. So you can see like the like lack of like medicine, lack of healthcare personnel, lack of money are huge problems. And this is at a different location in Uganda. This is kind of like emblematic of like very good plans, like not having like the legs and the funding to follow through. So this was an ambulance that was donated, but it only worked for 1 year, and it's just been sitting outside of a health center for I think 9 years. So it was a good planning, or it sounded like a good plan, but because there was no money and like not enough like will to follow through from the Ugandan healthcare system, a lot of interventions go like this. The health centers often run out of medicine, and they sometimes don't have any services to provide whatsoever. So it's pretty typical for people to go to 3 different health centers just to seek care. And these health centers take a very long time to get to. They're multiple hours walk away. So, I mean, like imagine like if you have a child who's sick from malaria, who could be dying, going to 3 different health centers and like walking 2 hours there and like 3 hours there and 4 hours there, just to try to find some medicine. And that's sadly like the reality that a lot of these people face. And so this boy named Nsasi, when he was 6 months old, he had a hydrocephalus, that's an enlarging of the head because of excess fluids in his brain. And it leads to mental retardation if it's not treated. But there was no money to treat him for the disease. So it would have cost about I think $200. But because they didn't have money, she went to I think 4 different health centers and hospitals. But at the end of the day, she found out that like the money for the surgery was too much, was more than she could pay. So now he's 5 years old and he can't talk. He can barely walk. So he's just he's pretty much like mentally gone because of she couldn't get care. And this is Julian. She fell down when she was like younger. So her father took her to 3 different health centers. But at each one of them, like they kept telling him to like go to a bigger health center and go to a bigger health center. And finally, when he got to the hospital, they told him to go to the National Referral Hospital. And at that point, he was like, okay, how much is this going to cost? And I think the doctor or the clinical officer said $300. But he makes $50 like a year. Like his family makes $50 a year, and he has 8 other kids. So as a result, like she didn't get her eye fixed, and she's probably like outcast for life. And this is Issa Brie. So his son recently died of malaria. So he could have bought medicine for $1, malaria medicine for $1 at like a pharmacy, at like a paid-for pharmacy. So in Uganda, government health centers are supposed to be free, although it's not always the case. Sometimes the health workers pocket the money. And like there's a lot of corruption in health centers, but so because so he went to different health centers, he couldn't find any medicine, and there was like a for-profit like pharmacy, and he was trying to find the money, like trying to find people to borrow money from, but most people in the village are subsistence farmers, so the only time when people really have money is after a harvest. So in this case, it wasn't harvest season, so he couldn't find money in time to pay for the malaria medicine, and this his son's grave. So clearly there's a huge problem with like access to healthcare and like funding for medicine. Problem is, I think really the problem is investment, like not only from like an international point of view, but also from the domestic Ugandan point of view. But it's like a very big problem in, yeah.
Thank you.
Do I just hit next or?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Hey everyone. So this summer I spent time in Andhra Pradesh, India, doing a project related to healthcare for Andhra Pradesh's impoverished. The city I was working in, it's called Tirupati. It's considered to be the most spiritual place in Andhra Pradesh, which I think is one of its official titles. It's technically the largest pilgrimage site in the world. More pilgrims visit the city than any other place on the planet. And right now I think it ranges from 30 to 40 million people per year. The temple in Tirupati, the Venkateshwara temple, generates an enormous amount of profit. Right now, I think the numbers say that it earns more than the Vatican, but that's declared money. We don't know about the rest of it. But a lot of that money has been fueling incredible growth, tourism, international tourism in this city, along with the city itself has been growing at a rapid rate. There's a lot of educational institutions, there's a lot of hospitals, there's a lot of funding available for the general public here. So I think this photo kind of well encapsulates, at least to me, what the experience of Tirupati was like. You see all these people sort of going about their business on the streets, and then behind you see a temple. There's so many temples. I probably visited maybe 6 or 7 in my time there, and that was probably just a fraction of the amount they have. And then you can see like a Vodafone booth. So it's this sort of convergence of modernity, people going on with their lives, but at the same time, this very spiritual background. Wrong button. So, I mean, even though you have people, like you have supermarkets coming up and all these fancy hotels are being built to accommodate these tourists, a lot of people still enjoy the tradition of going out to open air markets during the day. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background about the city of Tirupati because I think it really informs us about the healthcare culture that's there. My project was based at the Sri Venkateshwara Institute of Medical Sciences. They have a program there called the Pranadana Scheme, which helps a lot of Andhra Pradesh's impoverished pay for really expensive medical care. A lot of patients that visit the institute barely make, a few dollars out of the year probably. A lot of them are working agricultural jobs throughout Andhra Pradesh. Most of the state is officially below the federal poverty line. But the Pranadana Scheme can help them afford things like chemotherapy, radiotherapy, extended ventilator support, and a lot of other conditions that would cost a lot of money. But a lot of this it's directly funded by this Temple Institute, and it gives them the ability to do a lot of good things with the money, which is kind of impossible for a lot of other government medical centers in India, which I think makes it really unique. So I wanted to give you guys a bit of a sense of what it's like to be a patient at this place. This is just one waiting area for one department in the hospital. I don't know if you've ever been in a room with this many people, but it's just the volume of patients really does drive a lot of the processes and the experience here because there's so many people. Each one of these rooms you can see back there is actually a room where providers sit and they see patients. And I know, here in the United States, for those of you guys that are familiar with healthcare law, we have something called HIPAA. And with HIPAA, you can't discuss patient information on elevators because someone might overhear. And if you're talking about a patient in a room, you have to speak really quietly. So in case someone might overhear, you have to have all your emails on separate hospital emails to avoid sharing information. Here, see, these people are getting triaged, and by triaged, I mean they're getting their height, weight, blood pressure taken. Just, it's happening right here. There's no, the idea of like concealment or information being private, I think it was just mind-boggling to me. So that they're being taken in. There's nurses here that call out patients' names and bring them in. Patients don't go in one at a time. Here in the States, we like our privacy. We want the doors to be closed, so there's no HIPAA laws being violated. But I saw 2, 3, 4, 5 patients in a single room at a time, multiple providers there sitting and discussing conditions with each other as they're treating their patients. And then that's really what a place like this demands, just because there's so many people, there's so many needs, there's so many things to address, and there's limited but expanding means to take care of those needs. So this is a photo I took. It's from the surgical oncology floor of the hospital. These are all patient attendants, meaning family members or friends of patients waiting to hear news. Just beyond this room are the operating rooms where procedures are happening. You also know, I think one thing that's pretty striking about hospitals here is that you'll notice none of the patient attendants are wearing shoes. And it's a common custom for people to remove their shoes from entering areas that are considered to be sort of closed down for sanitation purposes. And that's, for me, going there, it was something that I wasn't used to at all, because the thought of my taking my shoes off at a hospital here was just, you wouldn't do something like that. But I think it's interesting to think about how the differences between how we conceptualize health and what we consider to be clean and unclean, they're not necessarily the same. So another thing that the Pranadana team does besides fund medical expenses is that they also take care of the families that come to see their patients. That come to see their relatives who are patients in the hospital. Basically, if you're an agricultural worker in India, taking time off because your daughter has a debilitating condition or needs surgery means you're not going to be able to making income that day, that week, maybe even that month. That's a lot of money that's lost. So, and obviously the travel can be very taxing because it's expensive. You don't necessarily have the means to take food with you because it might spoil. So the hospital recognizes these needs, and they provide food for people here at the hospital, and they also provide some form of lodging for them while they're here. So this whole line of people, I didn't even capture the entire line, but they're all just here lining up for food. And I think this line formed within a 1 hour period. And they do this every single day. So, while we think that, coming to the hospital means, it's a good thing, you're getting relieved, it can also bring on a lot of strain and stress to people. And this is one of the ways we can help, or the hospital helps manage that. I think another important consideration to make is just how spiritual this hospital is. Hospitals in the United States, while they might have religious origins, you don't necessarily see that everywhere. But here it's not uncommon to see sort of mini temples throughout the hospital. A lot of people that come here, Tirupati is a city where people come in droves as pilgrims because they come to temples and they're all looking for something, or they're all looking for hope in their lives. They want their loved ones to be cured from whatever illnesses they have. They come because their children are blind and they want some kind of help for their blindness. Everyone is here as a pilgrim, and I think the hospital itself is a place where people come as pilgrims. They come here to somehow better their lives or cure themselves or whatever they're ailing from. So having these kinds of things is really helpful for patients because it kind of, helps give them some sort of inner peace. And the hospital is very supportive of making sure that the patient's spiritual needs are taken care of as well. This is another shot of the outpatient department. These glassed off areas are sort of, they're called kendrams. Kendra means center in Sanskrit, and it's where patients are given token numbers as to determine their sort of priority and how they're going to be seen by physicians when they come in. The system is electronic, and it sort of came about just because there's so many people and it can be so difficult to manage everyone through a paper-based system. So patients sort of wait, and when their number comes up on the sort of screen over here, they're called in to go be seen by physicians. I think in the year of 2014, there was about 500,000 patient visits that happened in the entire year just in the outpatient department. So there's a lot of people to manage, and they're increasingly coming up with new ways to incorporate technology in the process. So as the last photo, this is not the usual patient. This is actually my sister. She had come to visit me in my last week, and she had been feeling kind of sick a few days before she came to the hospital. And she was actually, she was somewhere in the hospital. I don't remember where she was, but I remember getting a million phone calls, and someone had told me that she had started blanking out, and she had passed out on one of the floors. And turns out her blood pressure had actually gotten extremely low. So she came pretty close to losing it. She looks pretty mad in this picture. She didn't want me taking a photo of her. That's me holding a sample of hers. You don't want to know what's in the plastic box. But I think it was an interesting experience for all of us because we kind of got to see like the other side of the lens, so to speak. And what really struck me is that, I mean, if you're sort of, we sort of got the same treatment as everyone else. And there's a lot of places in India where if you dress a certain way, or if you look a certain way, or if you speak English, you're sort of given greater priority than other people. Like people somehow, there isn't necessarily like equity in class between how you're treated at a hospital, but I think at this institution, it's pretty much the same for everyone. So yeah, that's about it.
Hi everyone. My name is Katera Donahoe. I am a master's in public health student at Boston University. And I was in Bamako, Mali this summer in June and July reporting on female genital cutting and efforts to stop the practice. I just want to preface my presentation by saying that this is kind of a graphic issue and we'll be talking about some kind of sensitive stuff in relation to the practice. So just wanted to give you all that just to preface. So in Mali, 90 to 95% of women have undergone cutting. It usually happens anywhere from birth to age 7, but sometimes women are brought in adulthood. It's especially prevalent after marriages if a husband discovers that his wife hasn't been cut. Oh, sorry. Oh no. Wrong way. Oh, okay, yeah. If a husband discovers his wife wasn't cut in her youth, he will bring her to a cutter and have her cut in her adulthood. The risks, the medical risks of cutting increase the older that a girl is, so there are much more complications, especially if a woman is being cut in adulthood, obviously because she's reached maturity. There are 4 different kinds of genital cutting that are done as classified by international health organizations, ranging from simple cutting or nipping with a knife all the way up to a type called infibulation, which is where the labia and clitoris are removed and then the opening is then sewn up except for a small hole. So obviously, as you can imagine, this can lead to lots of health complications, obstructed labor, hemorrhaging obviously during the practice. Obstetric fistula has been shown to be tied to it. So it's a huge issue in Mali. Like I said, over 9 out of 10 women are cut and undergo the practice. So during my time there, I conducted over 30 interviews in 3 different languages, and like the time recorded ended up being about 1.2 days of our tape of recording. I went into this thinking that I had a lot of preconceptions and I tried to limit those as much as I can, but I really felt that this was an issue that would have clear protagonists and antagonists. Obviously you think this cutting, it's easy to think that like right off the bat it's a wrong and it's a human rights injustice, but that was kind of altered for me in my first Untold Story talked about this woman. Her name is Fanta Kante. She is a traditional practitioner of female genital cutting. She is 77 years old. She's been cutting for over 60 years. She belongs to what's called in Mali the Bambara blacksmith caste. Traditionally, these people are they're of a caste and they're traditionally blacksmiths. The men are blacksmiths. The women work in pottery, but they're feared and revered for their mystical abilities. They're very tapped into the ethereal and the mystical nature of Malian society, and so these people are generally in charge of the practice because they're believed to have the necessary power to harness the chaotic sexual nature of young girls, and so that's why they believe that you need to cut them in order to harness that power and so that girls will not run wild. So she was, I was just really struck by her because she had so many closely held traditions. You know, she was so passionate about this and she really believed that it's true, but it was also came down to kind of economics for her. It was something that she was supposed to be trained in from when she was 15, but so obviously she had no other economic means. She told me that she would have liked to stop cutting because she's 77 and she wants to retire at some point, but she has no other job. So this is what she does. It revealed a lot of fears for her of like the changing tides in Mali. There have been lots of efforts to end the practice, but it's obviously still super prevalent. She showed me a lot of her tools and her different the different things that she uses. So this is a knife that she used to practice the cutting. This was forged from stone by her, I believe, her great-grandmother. So that's where the blacksmith tradition comes in, also in ties with the tradition of cutting. She originally had 5 knives, and now she's down to 2, and this was just the one of them. She had given away the other 3 to people in her family, which she had been trying to train, but she's having a lot of difficulty finding people to take on the tradition because it's just coming out of fashion, this leads me to my second profile, which I'm working on now, but it's kind of harkens back to this, the migrant issue. I will be writing about 2 women who were born in Mali, but who have migrated to, one is from France, or lives in France now, and one has moved to the United States. The first woman, I don't have pictures of her because they wish to remain anonymous because of what they talked about, but the first woman, whose name was Awa, she lives in France now, but she was cut when she was born without the knowledge of her mother and against her mother's wishes. She told me a pretty harrowing story of her wedding night when she went to obviously consummate her marriage, and she had been so scarred from the process that it was impossible for her, and she was taken to have to be surgically altered the next day. And so she explained to me just the difficulties with her relationship with her husband, and having children has been so hard for her because she just doesn't have that desire that you need to perform these things. So she was able to undergo reconstructive surgery in France to have her feeling and she told me that restoring the sexual feeling had done amazing things for her marriage and for her, just her like a quality of life. She had such a better connection with her husband and her children, but she's aware that this is something that not everyone can have access to, because she was only able to go through this surgery because she was living in France and because she had gone to the gynecologist and they told her that this was a possibility for her. I think in Mali there's maybe only one doctor that performs these surgeries, and they're very limited as far as resources, for women to be able to afford this. So because some members of her family still support the practice, she has to keep this secret. She has to keep it secret that she's able to have this opportunity. And it really plagues her because it's something that she's proud of. It's something that she is glad to have the opportunity. And she was really passionate. She even told me that, especially in relation to her daughters, that she said that if anyone had tried to cut them, that she would kill them. That was how passionate she was about not having this done to her daughters and ending this practice. So that brings me to Mariam, the second woman, who lives in the US now, but who frequently travels back to Mali to visit her family. She has 2 daughters, and she goes back every summer to see her family. And she was really vehement that they would not be cut because, she just believes that it's wrong. But when she goes back, she worries about her family, and she worries about their opinions because they would like to see the tradition go on in her family. And the only recourse that she's been able to have to fend off her family from taking her daughters from her to have them cut is that it's illegal. In the United States and in other European countries, there's laws in the books about vacation cutting. which is this, what happens is it's illegal obviously to cut in the United States and European countries, but if they discover that your daughter has been cut while on vacation or while visiting family, parents will be jailed. And so that has been really her only choice in order to fend off her family from taking her daughters from her to have this done, which, you know, is not something that Malians, because parents' wishes in Mali often take precedent over yours. And so, you know, her mother obviously has so much more authority than her. The only recourse she's had has been able to say, well, I'll go to jail if you do this to them. So these laws in the US and Western countries signify a shift and a lot more attention paid to this issue in other countries, but there's no law on the books in Mali, and the laws that are on the books in other countries criminalizing this activity are very sporadic and not able to be enforced. Often when a law is put in place criminalizing the activity, it drives it underground and makes it much more dangerous than it already is. So my long form piece will be about the struggle to end this practice and the suspicions around the motives for Western organizations coming into Mali in order to end the practice. A lot of people I spoke to had the belief that if you get into anti-female genital cutting campaigns and stuff, it's a great way to get rich. They said that that's because there's so much money and there's so many campaigns going on with UNICEF and other large organizations, that they said that as soon as you start working in anti-FGC, you immediately start driving a large SUV and your life improves so much more. So it was a very strange idea that this is something that they believe will make you get rich if that's what you get into. So there's a ton of suspicion around efforts to end the practice, and there's a ton of suspicion around, you know, why why Western nations have so much vested interest in coming in and changing the culture. So that's my project. Thank you.
Well, that was fantastic. And I think you all heard that there is a lot of medical, or could tell that there's a lot of medical expertise in this group. So before we go on to questions, I just wanted to give you a chance to say what you do when you're not pursuing journalism. And Kateri, you already told us that you're, why don't you just pass the mic,
sure. Yeah.
But a master's of public health. And Anne?
Yeah, I just finished my master's of public health in May, and I'm a fourth-year medical student applying for residency.
I'm a pre-med, applying to medical school.
And tell us, you mentioned that when you were in Uganda, you were doing some other projects. Just very briefly, what were they, the medical projects?
Okay, one of my projects was a research project that I was doing on pediatric malaria. We were seeking to find the care-seeking habits and also alternate modalities of medicine, because like plants that could be used to treat malaria are abundant. So you just kind of wanted to like see what plants work the best. And another project that I was doing was building emergency medical care capacity in Eastern Uganda through working with 2 NGOs.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm still an undergraduate at Penn. I'm studying neuroscience and healthcare management and policy. So I'll be applying to medical school this year.
It was great to work with you all because you had so much of this medical knowledge, and I think that affected your stories a lot. Let's move on now to questions. Who wants to start? I will start with one question while you think of your questions. I was interested in, you mentioned that you thought that the situation with open defecation was improving because in the schools. And no.
Yeah, I did say that.
Okay, that I mean, if we're looking for what solutions are out there, one place to look was through education in the schools. And I'm wondering, Priya and Jay, what you would say to that, or how you think we can improve the healthcare. Jay, I think you mentioned investment, but do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Okay. So the question was how I think the healthcare system could be improved.
Yes.
Okay.
If you were looking for solutions and could wave a magic wand.
Okay. So currently, Ugandan's government's biggest expense is the military. And I'm not sure of the need for like such a big military for Uganda. So I think if like some resources within the government could be diverted to healthcare, it would definitely improve it. And also, but also like the challenge is that a lot of areas are very remote. Meaning like you can't have like computerized systems. You can't really do things like in a systemic or organized way. When like all you have are like notebooks and a pen, like you can't like really make people accountable with such low infrastructure. So at the end of the day, it goes back to economic development, and that's like the ultimate solution for it. But in the meantime, like dandy solutions of like more investment from foreign donors into the healthcare system, of like empowering like community members to lead public health solutions. Yeah, I think those are what can be done in the meantime.
Priya, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so on the topic of schools, I think one of the things that the Institute really prided itself on was being such a good quality teaching institution. After talking to a lot of clinicians and like other physicians there was kind of this general consensus that government-sponsored medical education in India is generally of like relatively good quality. Because of a lot of these resources that are pouring into therapy, there's been like an expansion of all like new engineering colleges are coming up all the time. There's new medical schools happening. So there's this general concern that with all these new privatized schools that are coming out, the quality of education is kind of suffering. I mean, I heard a lot of doctors tell me that they weren't really sure about how much these new kids coming out of private medical schools really knew. So I think like maybe just if we like, I'm sure that there's a lot of journalists that have been writing about the quality of education and like improving standards. I know in Nepal, like recently, there's been a lot of protests there about improving the quality of education. So just ensuring that providers have like all received some kind of standard. I think that would be a great step in improving the healthcare system overall.
I'd like to add to something. So there are like a lot of these health center twos around like rural Uganda, and they're usually the nicest buildings in like the neighborhood, which isn't saying that much, but they cost like a lot of money to build. So instead of building like many health centers that don't have supplies, I think if there are like fewer health centers that were like well stocked and that did have supplies and like treatment, then healthcare could be better.
Thanks. Did somebody here have a question? I think I okay.
You can go first. Questions for Jay. I'm well aware that there are a lot of NGOs, international humanitarian organizations like the Gates Foundation, pharmaceutical companies that ally with each other to provide vaccines. I know that there, at least in developed countries, is an effort to get pharmaceuticals to underdeveloped countries like Uganda. Did you see any evidence of those donations, or is there really a true disconnect that nothing gets to the patient?
So oftentimes what happens is so like government health centers are stocked 4 times a year from the government, and a lot of the funding comes from USAID and like the Gates Foundation and like charitable organizations, but there's just not enough. I mean, like without these foundations, the healthcare would be even worse. But currently, there's just like not enough investment. And also, like another problem is that like the people that work at these health centers don't make a lot of money. I think nurses make about like $100 a month, and they also have to like pay for their family and like pay for like their children's schooling. So sometimes what happens is they take the medicine that they're providing to health centers and they sell it for profit.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the questions for Priya. You mentioned in your project a really interesting aspect of how there's sort of a pilgrimage within the pilgrimage to the hospital, but then there's also the temple in the hospital. So I was wondering if you had any sort of elaborating thoughts on the connection in India between hospitals and spirituality.
Connection between hospitals and spirituality. I mean, I think when it's so to elaborate on the whole pilgrimage idea, when I was in the actual temple area, it's situated on a hill that's sort of a little bit of a drive away from the hospital center itself. I was like in the midst of like right where the temple entrance was, and I was just like, I was literally inhaling other people's carbon dioxide. It was just, you know, we were all so close. And I remember at one point, all of these crowds of people were just sort of stopped because we had to wait for individuals who were in hospital beds that were being taken into the main part of the temple. I saw a lot of people there that sort of had physical signs of having Cushing syndrome. It's one of the things I talk about in one of my pieces, but basically it's a disorder that causes like really rapid weight gain. They have a very characteristic appearance, and there's so many, you know, kids sitting around there. Even along the sides of, before you actually approach the temple area, there are these things that are sold. They're like these little metallic pieces that have emblems of eyes and arms carved on them, and it's what you can deposit in these sort of donation bins for God in order to, like, if you have a child whose like limb was missing, you can put that in as like a way to sort of, you know, have that taken care of, I guess, in a sense. So I think there is this vast connection between a person's health status and why they're coming to therapy. And I don't think that the spiritual experience was necessarily separate at all from the hospital experience. The director was actually telling me at one point that she has like religious devotional songs playing throughout the hospital at certain hours of the day. There is like a full on, before patients are, like the pranadhana scheme I was telling you about, before patients are oriented to actually go inside the scheme, they stand in this hall where there's like, you know, a few idols of God, like, you know, sitting right there, like they're being funded with something like directly in front of this sort of spiritual emblem. So I think, yeah, the two are really interconnected, especially, you know, in a city such as this. I'm sorry, I hope I answered your question. It's kind of.
And then
my question's for Terry. You had mentioned that with female genital cutting, there is, you almost went in with this idea that there was going to be clear antagonists and protagonists. And throughout your presentation, it sounded like there are obviously a lot of disadvantages to female genital cutting. But I was wondering what the reasoning given for female genital cutting was, whether it's purely steeped in tradition, and what necessarily the reasoning for that is.
Sure, that's a great question. It's interesting because most Malayans believe that it's a necessary thing to do within Islam. They think that it's a religious practice that's necessary for them. But many imams across all the countries that practice this have refuted this idea. Female genital cutting only comes up, I think, once in one hadith, and it's neither sponsored nor kind of told not to do by Muhammad. So it's very like a controversial idea. But ironically enough, the people who are in support of keeping it going are imams, even though they have no, you know, real backup for why to do it. A lot of it also is just social pressure. Women who are uncut are really unmarriageable. And of women, I've found a lot with the issue of co-wives. And if one of the wives is found to have not been cut, she's ostracized from the family pretty heavily. So yeah, it's a lot of, I think those are the two main reasons why common Malayans do it. Why Fantai Kante was doing it is because it was passed down to her from thousands and thousands of years back in her family because she belonged to this caste. But yeah, I would say social pressure and religious ideas are the two main reasons. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up really quick? Just really quick. But you had said that the one woman who had done your untold story about, she ended up undergoing reconstructive surgery, and that was under the pressure of her husband because she couldn't consummate the marriage. Do you think that that's, sorry, did I
It's, yeah, maybe I didn't tell it right. She wanted that surgery.
Okay,
she was, I mean, because it restored her sexual feeling. Okay. And her husband was just in support of it because he wanted her to be happy. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, is that okay?
Yeah. It was just if whether things are changing or not. If there's less of what here.
Things are changing. Yeah. No, things are definitely changing. There's lots of, especially among young people. Almost every young person I talked to was had decided that they would not cut their daughters, and that there's a changing tide going on. So yeah, a lot of it is like old versus young, especially. Yeah.
So my question is for both Anne and Priya. And you had mentioned that the man that you spent time with that being part of that lower caste, like what would have been an untouchable, that was just like another barrier for him. I'm wondering if that situation is improving at all, if you see that as improving, that it's like only one of the barriers and not like the major one. And I'm wondering, Priya, you saw any of that in the city that you were in? I don't know what the demographic makeup is there, but if you came across that at all.
So I think that caste in cities is not as, from what I talked to, I didn't spend time in cities, but from people I talked to, they said that there's a lot of mixing in cities. You can't really tell by looking at people, by where they live in cities, what caste you belong. But in the rural areas, they're communities of different castes, kind of, especially like the Dalits all kind of lived in the same area. It's a small place, everyone knows each other. So it doesn't seem like that's really changing in where I was. But I think that there are also a lot of young people who are like, this doesn't matter, this is insignificant, and especially in the cities, I think that is the sentiment.
That was kind of an interesting experience for me in the hospital, because on one hand, I mean, I was interacting with a lot of physicians who were, young people that were educated, and I don't think that for them there was really, one of the women that I had gotten to know pretty well, she was an anesthesiologist who was working, I guess, in the surgical oncology unit at the time, and one of her good friends, a lot of the staff belonged to different social castes and class, and we could all just sit down and have lunch together and talk about the weather, and it was fine. But I think, one of the major distinctions I encountered was there is this sort of, at least in that part of Andhra Pradesh, there is a lot of emphasis on hierarchy, especially if you're a person from a certain background, you address people in a certain way. Like even in the Telugu language, there's different tenses for showing respect, which are more commonly used by certain groups of people to other groups of people. And I think that once you sort of reach the part where you are educated, that kind of disappears. But when you haven't, you could still be there. One thing I talked about in one of my stories was interviewing a woman whose daughter was suffering from a really debilitating condition. And I was trying to find out about her financial situation, how she became enrolled in the Pradhan program. And I had brought her a chair, and I had also gotten myself a stool, and I wanted her to sit down with me so we could talk together. But she didn't want to sit down, and she didn't really want to talk to me initially. I was wearing a white shirt. I don't speak any Telugu. I was holding a notebook and had a pen. I was going to write things down. I was asking her a lot of important information, and all of these things are signals that I'm someone important, and I'm maybe coercing her into doing something that she didn't want to do. So it took a lot of convincing to say hey, I'm not here to take advantage of you. I'm not someone who thinks that I'm somebody and you're not somebody. I just want to find out who you are and what you're about. And that to me was kind of shocking, because I'd never been in a position where someone just didn't inherently trust me because of what I looked like or the way I talked. I think that was the first time I was really slapped with this whole issue of this is something that people really deal with every day. And for those of us who have all gone to school, we have the privilege of saying I can be in a room and I can know that, okay, this person's a doctor, they're here to help me, or this person's, I can talk to this person and feel like we're sort of communicating on the same page, or their inherent thoughts about me aren't looking down at me. But, if you're someone who has no education, you don't make any money, you don't know anything outside of the health system except for the fact that you're coming here after days and days of traveling, hoping that your kid will get some medicine. It's the amount of stigma that you feel, and the amount of all these different social circumstances you're put in, it must be insurmountable. So in that sense, I did feel a sense of class, but once people kind of were all educated and gone to school, that sort of, it's not really as there anymore. But it can sometimes play a role in politics. I'm not going to get into that.
Okay, this is the last question. And
this question's for you, Anne. I was just wondering, when you were communicating with people back here, you're trying to craft your story, trying to bring home for people the idea of not having a bathroom. It's almost so foreign to people like us who have never had to even think about that. I wanted to ask what your greatest challenges were in trying to bring that home for people to really make it something that isn't a faraway place, but a reality for people every day.
I like your question. I try to, let's see, I really don't like having like an us and them kind of thing. So I try to explain it as like not people are ignorant and this is just like an other, but just saying that, like, what would you do if you were in the situation? So I think talking about like these men who were trying to protect their women by giving them the luxury of the toilet, that was one thing I did. I also tried to be a little bit humorous. I don't know if I succeeded, but I think that if you like, I don't know, someone told me that by using the word poop, it was like, it kind of broke the ice a little bit, you know, made it a little bit more common, not just saying like defecation, you know. So I don't know, I tried to do that. But I think that was one challenging thing, but one exciting thing. And I think that actually is like one of the roots of why this is such a big public health problem, is because no one wants to talk about it. Everyone would rather talk about clean water and how we can provide clean water than like, we need to contain the poop and get rid of it so that the water can naturally be clean.
Well, that's a great place to end.
Yeah.
So, Kid has something to say.
So a lot of you have already spoken with me and with Evie. Evie's going to make a beautiful video so that more people want to do this opportunity and they can see what a great weekend you guys are having. And I'm going to be tweeting short videos of you guys to let your many fans know what you're up to. So if you haven't seen me and you haven't seen Evie, during this break we're going to be like shuffling you in and out of these. This room and that room, those two offices.
And they're two different videos, so you have to see each of us individually.
Both, yes.
Yeah.